My parents called my work computer nonsense while they praised my brother as a self-made king, but his whole company was standing on the money I paid in silence. When they demanded $15 million from me, like I was born to serve him, I didn't cry or explain. I stopped paying one hidden bill and watched their golden son finally meet the truth. The night my parents asked me to give my brother $15 million, Ridge Quenby was standing under a bright blue banner that called him Copperline's Self-Made Builder of the Year. He held the glass award in both hands like it weighed something. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father had his chin lifted the way men do when they want the room to believe they raised a king. My sister-in-law, Brissa, was filming everything for Ridge's company page, making sure the light caught his smile and the gold letters behind him. I sat at a round table near the service doors with a paper napkin in my lap, watching the whole town clap for a man who had been standing on my money for 10 years. Nobody in that civic pavilion knew the truth. Not the mayor, not the county board, not the people eating chicken off rented plates, not even most of my family. They thought Ridge had built Quenby Civic Works with grit, faith, and a strong back. They thought I had built something soft and invisible on a computer screen. But I knew the award in my brother's hand had been paid for one quiet renewal at a time from my account. I knew every public sidewalk, every school roof, every county repair contract had my signature buried under it. And before that night was over, my parents would tell me I owed him $15 million more, because in their minds, Ridge built the family name and I was only the daughter who could afford to help. Stay with me, because this is the story of how I stopped paying for a lie and let my family hear the sound it made when it finally cracked. My name is Tavia Quenby. I was 35 that summer, and I had just sold my company, Rivetmark Systems, for $25 million. Rivetmark was not glamorous. It was not the kind of company people in Copperline, Kentucky put on banners. It helped small contractors keep their licenses clean, track payroll rules, manage insurance certificates, file state forms, and avoid the kind of paperwork mistakes that can destroy a business faster than bad weather. I built it after years of watching men like my father and brother treat paperwork like women's work until the paperwork took their money, their contracts, or their name. I started in a rented room above a laundromat in Lexington with one folding desk, a used laptop, and a coffee maker that burned everything. I answered customer calls at midnight. I ate gas station sandwiches in my car. I learned contract language line by line because nobody in my family had ever thought I was worth teaching anything useful. 10 years later, a national compliance firm bought Rivetmark. The check was real, the number was real. But I did not rush home waving it. I knew my family too well. Money does not create love in people who never practiced it. It only gives their hunger a cleaner excuse. Copperline was the kind of town where everyone knew which family owned which truck and which pew they sat in at church. We had old tobacco warehouses, a courthouse with cracked stone steps, a river bridge that shook when freight trucks crossed it, and more pride than opportunity. My father, Darrow Quenby, had worked construction most of his life. His hands were wide and scarred, and for years I confused silence with strength because he wore both the same way. My mother, Sybil, was polished in public and sharp in private. She could make cruelty sound like advice if she lowered her voice enough. And then there was Ridge, 3 years older than me, loud from birth, handsome in a careless way, and blessed with the strange family magic that turns every mistake into someone else's responsibility. If Ridge failed a class, he was under pressure. If I got an A, I was doing what girls like me were supposed to do. If Ridge dented my father's truck, he was learning. If I asked for gas money to get to work, I needed to budget better. My parents never said they loved him more. They didn't have to. They built the house around that truth and expected me to dust it. The first time I understood my place in the family, I was 11. Our school had a bridge building contest. You could only use paper, glue, and string. Ridge forgot about it until the night before. I had spent 2 weeks making mine. It was small, neat, and stronger than it looked. I tested it with canned beans from the pantry while my mother watched from the doorway. Ridge saw it on the kitchen table and said, "That looks good enough. I'll take it." I laughed because I thought he was joking. My mother did not laugh. She said, "Tavia, your brother needs confidence. You're already good at school. Let him have this one." My father said nothing, so Ridge carried my paper bridge to school the next morning, told everyone he had built it, and came home with a ribbon. My parents taped that ribbon to his bedroom wall. Nobody mentioned the bridge again except me, inside my own head. every time I watched Ridge carry something I had made and get praised for being strong enough to hold it. That pattern followed us into adulthood. Ridge got my father's old tools, then his work truck, then introductions to county people who liked doing business with familiar names. I got a stack of library books and the sentence my mother used whenever I asked for help. Tav, you've always been the practical one. Practical meant no one worried about you. Practical meant your pain had to be scheduled around everyone else's emergency. At 20, I moved to Lexington with 2 suitcases and a part-time bookkeeping job for a roofing company. I learned invoices before I learned peace. I learned how payroll taxes could ruin a man who thought being good with concrete was enough. I learned that every visible building had invisible paperwork under it, and if that paperwork failed, the whole thing could stop. That knowledge became Rivet Mark, but back home, Ridge was still the golden son. He started Quemby Civic Works with my father's name, my mother's church smile, and a borrowed bulldozer. People said he had vision. I knew he had volume. There is a difference. Ridge's first real chance came when he was 28. The county wanted a sidewalk project near the elementary school, not huge money, but enough to make his company look serious. The problem was the bond. A performance bond sounds complicated, but it means one simple thing. If a contractor fails, someone else has to cover the damage. Public jobs require it because taxpayers do not like unfinished roads and half-built roofs. Ridge could not qualify. He had unpaid suppliers, late payroll filings, a small tax lien he blamed on a bad accountant, and 2 private jobs that had ended with angry clients and legal letters. No bonding company wanted to stand behind him. That should have been the end of it. It was not, because my parents drove to Lexington on a rainy Thursday and met me at a diner off the highway after my shift. My mother wore her good coat, the one she used when she wanted to look like a woman asking for nothing while asking for everything. My father brought a folder. Ridge did not come. That should have told me enough. "It's just a paper door," my mother said, sliding the folder toward me. "Your brother has the skill. He only needs someone with clean records to help open it." My father said, "This is how families build something. Ridge gets the outside work. You understand the inside work." I was 25 and still hungry for one honest sentence from them that sounded like pride. So when they said my name could help the family, I heard something softer than what they meant. I signed an indemnity agreement. I allowed a collateral support arrangement. I approved the first premium from my own account because they said Ridge would repay it after the county check came in. The paper said I was backing the bonding line. The plain English version was worse. If Ridge failed, my money and my name would answer for it. It was supposed to be 1 season. That is how every trap in my life had been introduced. 1 season, 1 favor, 1 signature, 1 small silence. Ridge got the sidewalk contract. The town saw orange cones, fresh concrete, and his logo on the side of a white truck. My parents saw proof that their son was becoming important. I saw the first premium leave my account. Then the next renewal came. Ridge was close to stable, my mother said. Then a supplier threatened a claim, and I paid part of it quietly because 1 claim could damage the bond line. Then another contract needed another certificate. Then the bonding agent needed more collateral support because Ridge had taken on too much equipment debt. Each year there was a new reason not to stop. Each year my mother called it temporary. Each year my father promised Ridge was turning a corner. I stopped believing them long before I stopped paying. That is the sad part. Sometimes you know the truth and still keep funding the lie because the lie is attached to people you once needed to love you. By the time Rivet Mark sold, I had paid $2,187,600 into Ridge's survival in one form or another. Bond premiums, collateral fees, supplier settlements before they became claims, emergency payments made through accounts that wore clean names but all pointed back to me. I tracked everything because I built software for records and because women like me learned to keep proof when nobody keeps faith. Ridge did not know the full amount. My parents certainly did not. They knew I had helped with paperwork years ago. They knew enough to keep quiet and not enough to feel ashamed. Ridge kept growing. He won city repairs, school additions, park walkways, and one small bridge repair that Copper Line still bragged about. He stood at ribbon cuttings in hard hats too clean to respect. He gave quotes to the local paper about discipline and family legacy. Once he told a reporter, "No one handed me a thing." I read that line on my phone while waiting at an airport, and I remember laughing once, not because it was funny, but because if I did not laugh, I would have made a sound I couldn't take back. Brissa was the one who found out about my sale. Brissa had married Ridge 3 years earlier and treated his company like a stage. She posted sunrise shots of bulldozers, slow-motion videos of cement pours, and captions about building America one honest job at a time. She loved words like legacy and grit because they looked good under pictures of men in reflective vests. One morning, a Lexington business article mentioned Rivetmark's acquisition. My photo was small, my hair pulled back, my smile uncomfortable. The headline had the number. Brissa sent it to my mother before lunch. By dinner, my phone was warm from calls. Sybil left a message saying she missed hearing my voice. Darrow texted, "Proud of you, kiddo," which was the first time he had used that word for me without needing something after it. Ridge wrote, "Big news, sis. We need to celebrate." 3 exclamation marks from a man who had forgotten my birthday twice. That was how I knew the money had entered the room before I did. The award night came 2 weeks later. Copperline Civic Pavilion was decorated with blue tablecloths and cheap centerpieces made of tiny plastic construction cones. Ridge wore a navy suit and work boots for the image. My mother kept touching people's arms and saying, "We always knew he had it in him." My father shook hands like he owned part of every compliment. I sat through Ridge's speech while he thanked God, his crew, the county board, his wife, and the values my parents gave me. He did not say my name. I did not expect him to. Expectation is how old wounds keep getting invited to new rooms. Still, when the room stood and clapped, I felt the same 11-year-old girl inside me watching her paper bridge leave the house in someone else's hands. If you have ever watched someone receive applause for standing on your sacrifice, you know the kind of quiet that forms in your chest. It does not shake, it hardens. After the photos, my mother guided me into a smaller reception room behind the stage. That was Sybil's way. Public warmth, private invoice. Ridge came in with Brissa, still holding the award. Darrow closed the door but did not sit. On a side table, little plates of cheesecake were sweating under plastic wrap. My mother smiled as if we were about to discuss flowers. "Tav, we are so proud of what you've done," she said. "Truly, God has blessed this family." I noticed she said, "family, not you." Ridge set the award down and leaned against the table. "There's an opportunity," he said. "A regional municipal package, roads, drainage, school maintenance, 3 counties. It would put Quenby Civic Works on the map for good." Brissa added, "It would change everything." My mother looked at me with soft eyes that had never once softened without a hook inside them. "Your brother needs $15 million to strengthen the bid and secure the expansion. Not a gift exactly, an investment in the family name." For a few seconds, I thought I had misheard. $15 million. They said it with the calm of people asking someone to pass salt. Ridge started explaining how cash strength would make the banks comfortable and show the county he could scale. He used words he had learned that week: liquidity, capacity, confidence. Brissa said, "My software money should come back to something real, something people could see." My father looked at the carpet. My mother said, "You don't need all of it, Tav. Ridge builds things that last." That was the sentence that cut through everything else. Not because it was new, but because it was old. My whole life, they had treated my work like air. Useful, invisible, expected. Ridge poured concrete and became a man. I created systems that kept companies alive, and somehow that was not real enough to respect, only real enough to spend. I asked one question. "What happens if I say no?" Ridge's jaw tightened. Brissa answered before he could. "Then you'll be the reason he loses the biggest chance this town has ever seen." I did not argue. I have learned that when people build a trap out of guilt, arguing only helps them test the walls. I told them I needed time. My mother smiled because she thought time meant pressure would work. Ridge hugged me hard, the way men hug when they're already counting your money. I drove back to Lexington that night with the award lights still in my eyes and a number burning in my head. 15 million. They had not asked what I had already paid. They had not asked why Ridge could not stand without me. They had not asked anything that would require them to see me as a person instead of a reserve account. The next morning, I called Larkin Frost. Larkin's office was on the 4th floor of a narrow brick building near downtown Lexington. She was a business attorney with silver hair, square glasses, and the kind of calm that makes dramatic people sound even worse. I brought 3 boxes, 10 years of documents, bond agreements, renewal notices, wire receipts, supplier releases, Emails from Bowden Rusk, the bonding agent, and my own spreadsheets printed in color because some truth's deserving. Larkin read more than she spoke. Every now and then, she placed a sticky note on a page. After an hour, she looked up and said, "Tavia, your brother's company has been using your financial support as the backbone of its bonding capacity for a decade." I said, "I know." She tapped the top page. "No, I mean legally, not emotionally. This is not a small favor. This is the reason he has access to public work." She explained it cleanly. I did not own Quenby Civic Works. I did not control Rich's bank account, but my indemnity, my collateral support, and my payment history had made his bonding line possible. The renewal was due in 9 days. If I chose not to renew my support, Ridge would have to qualify on his own. Based on the records, his debt, late payments, and supplier history, Larkin did not think he could. Without the bond, he could not take the regional package. Some existing contracts might also be reviewed if the bonding company lost confidence. "Can I stop legally?" I asked. Larkin nodded. "You are not required to lend him your spine forever." That sentence landed so hard I looked away. Then she gave me the other road. I could sue to recover part of what I had paid. I could expose the structure. I could drag Ridge's public image into a very public fight. "But understand," she said, "winning that way keeps you tied to him for years." I asked what the quietest lawful option was. She slid one page toward me. "Do not renew. Give proper notice. Request final accounting. Let his company stand on its own documents." I almost chose the loud road. I really did. For 2 days, I imagined Ridge answering questions under oath. I imagined my mother sitting in a courtroom while every payment appeared on a screen. I imagined Darrow finally having to say out loud that his daughter had carried his son's name. There is a kind of revenge that feels like medicine until you realize you are still swallowing the same poison. On the 3rd day, I drove to see Odette Pryor. Odette was a retired municipal clerk who had taught me more about contracts than any college class. She lived in a yellow house near the old river bridge and kept her files in metal cabinets labeled with painter's tape. Years earlier, when I was young and tired and trying to understand county bidding rules, she had let me sit at her kitchen table and read old procurement manuals while she made black coffee strong enough to restart a heart. Odette listened to the whole story without once looking surprised. That was her gift. She had spent 40 years watching men act shocked when paperwork remembered what they wanted forgotten. When I finished, she said, "So you want to burn him down?" I said, "Maybe." She nodded toward the window where the old bridge crossed Copperline Creek in the distance. "When you were a girl, didn't you build some paper bridge your brother stole?" I laughed because I had not told her that story in years. "He didn't steal it," I said. "My family handed it to him." Odette's mouth tightened. Same thing with better manners. Then she gave me the line that changed everything. A bridge does not chase the truck that crosses it. It either holds or it doesn't. And sweetheart, you are allowed to stop being the bridge. I sat there with my hands around a mug I had not drunk from. In that moment, I understood the difference between revenge and release. Revenge would make Ridge look at me. Release would make me stop needing him to. The next morning, I sent the notice. No speech, no family meeting, no social media post with a sad song under it. Just a formal letter to Bowden Rusk and the bonding company stating that I would not renew collateral support, would not authorize future payments, and would not cure claims beyond existing legal obligations. Larkin reviewed every word. I signed it in blue ink at a UPS store between a rack of padded envelopes and a printer that jammed twice. The clerk handed me a receipt with the tracking number. That was the true turning point of my life, not the award night, not the confrontation that came later. The most expensive thing I ever did for my brother ended beside shipping tape and passport photo signs, with no one watching. I walked to my car and sat there for a minute. I expected guilt to arrive. It did not. What came instead was a strange, clean fear. For the first time in 10 years, Ridge's company was about to meet the world without me under it. The truth started moving through Copperline in business clothes. First, Bowden called Ridge about the missing renewal support. Then the bank asked for updated bonding confirmation. Then the county delayed the regional package. Then suppliers, who always hear weather before it rains, started asking for faster payment. Brissa stopped posting videos. Ridge called me on a Tuesday night, angry enough to hide that he was scared. "What did you do?" he said. I was sitting at my kitchen island looking at the framed first dollar rivet Mark had ever earned. I stopped renewing my support, I said. You killed my expansion. No, I said. I stopped paying for the permission that made it look like yours. He cursed, then lowered his voice. They won't bond me alone. I know. Silence. Then, smaller, how long has it been you? I could have answered with every year, every receipt, every night I paid someone else's problem and went back to work. Instead, I said, long enough. He hung up first. That was fine. Men like Ridge often confuse ending a call with winning it. My mother called next. She did not ask if the documents were true. She asked how I could embarrass my brother during the biggest moment of his career. That is how I knew Ridge had told her enough to panic and not enough to repent. You are punishing him because he got attention, Sybil said. You always had that quiet jealousy. Jealousy. I almost admired the word. It takes talent to turn $2.1 million of hidden support into envy. I told her I was not taking anything from Ridge. I was simply done providing something he had no right to demand. Family rises together, she said. Only if everyone is allowed to stand, I answered. She cried then, but not the way sorry people cry. She cried like a woman whose favorite tool had stopped working. Darrow called later and said, Tav, maybe we can all sit down. He sounded tired. I said yes because I wanted to speak once in one room with proof. I was done explaining myself in fragments. Sybil chose Rivermill Inn for the lunch because she believed public places made people behave, and by people she meant me. The inn sat beside Copperline Creek in an old brick building that used to store grain. It had white tablecloths, polished wood floors, and windows looking out at the pedestrian bridge. My parents arrived early. Ridge and Brissa sat across from them. 2 cousins were there, along with a retired county commissioner who had always treated Ridge like a nephew. A small jury dressed for lunch. My mother's face was tight with purpose. She had arranged the room the way she used to arrange church potlucks, placing every dish where it could do the most work. I walked in with one folder and no jewelry except the plain watch I bought the week Rivet Mark signed its first client. Ridge looked like he had not slept. Brissa would not meet my eyes. My father stood halfway, then sat back down. I took the empty chair facing the window. Behind them, the real Bridge stood, in the gray afternoon light, steady, old, and done carrying more than it was built to hold. My mother began before the server finished pouring water. Your brother needs $15 million by Friday, she said. No hello, no softness, just the invoice. This family cannot sit here while one child has millions and the other loses everything. Ridge leaned forward. My company is on the line, Tav. My contracts, my crew, my name. I looked at him for a long moment. Your name, I said. That's interesting. Sybil's eyes flashed. Do not be cruel. I opened the folder and placed the first document on the table. This is the original bonding support agreement from 10 years ago. Nobody moved. This is the first premium I paid. This is the collateral letter. These are supplier releases I covered before they became claims. These are renewals. These are emergency payments. This is the current notice saying I will not renew. I placed the final page down. And this is the total, $2,187,600. The retired commissioner took off his glasses. Brissa's hand went to her mouth. Darrow closed his eyes. Ridge stared at the number like it was written in another language. My mother recovered first because denial had always been her quickest muscle. That can't be right. I nodded. It is right. I have every record. Ridge said, You never told me it was that much. You never asked what it cost me to keep saying yes. His face changed then, not fully, but enough. Something under the pride shifted. I kept my voice even. 10 years ago, no bonding company wanted to back Quimby Civic Works. You had supplier problems, tax problems, and unfinished jobs. Mom and Dad came to Lexington and asked me to open one paper door. I opened it. Then I kept paying to hold it open. Every public contract you used to build your reputation passed through that door. I looked at my mother. So when you say Ridge builds things that last, remember this. For 10 years, every sidewalk he poured had my signature buried under it. Ridge pushed his chair back, then pulled it forward again, like his body could not decide whether to fight or flee. You're making it sound like I did nothing. No, I said. You worked. Your crew worked. But you were not alone, and you were never self-made. That word cut deeper than I expected. Maybe because it was the one on the banner. Maybe because it was the story he loved most about himself. Sybil reached for his arm. Tavia, Your brother has a wife, employees, people depending on him. So did I said. I had employees too. I had clients. I had rent. I had risk. But when my account was paying his premiums, nobody said people depended on me. When I covered supplier problems to keep his bond clean, nobody called that family legacy. You only call it duty when it leaves my hands. The table went quiet enough that I could hear forks from the next room. Then my mother said the thing I knew was coming. You would let your own brother fall? I looked out the window at the bridge, then back at her. No, I am letting him stand without me. There's a difference. Ridge's voice broke in a way I had not heard since we were kids. You promised family. I nodded once. I promised one chance. You turned it into a decade. My father finally spoke. Sybil, enough. It was too late and too small, but it was the first honest sound he had made all day. My mother turned on him. You knew. Darrow looked at the papers. I knew she signed. I didn't know all this. I believed him, partly. My father had always been careful not to know things that would require him to act. That was his gift and his shame. He looked at me and said, Tav. I stopped him gently. Don't make me small because the numbers got large. Brissa stood up and walked to the window. Her reflection looked pale against the creek. I wondered how many captions she would have to delete. Ridge put both hands over his face. For the first time in his life, maybe, he was sitting inside the cost of applause. I did not enjoy it. I want to be clear about that. There was no sweetness in seeing my brother's face open around a truth he should have been told years ago. But peace is not always sweet. Sometimes peace is just the absence of one more payment. Sybil whispered, What are we supposed to do now? I gathered the papers slowly. That is the first honest question anyone has asked today. And I don't know, but I know what I'm not doing. I looked at Ridge. I am not giving you $15 million. I am not renewing the bond support. I am not suing you today. I am not calling the paper. I am not making a speech at your office. I am simply done renewing a lie. My mother's face hardened again. After everything we gave you, I almost smiled because the sentence was so old it felt dusty. You gave Ridge my bridge when I was 11, I said. You gave him Dad's truck, Dad's contacts, your excuses, and then my clean name. You gave me responsibility and called it strength. I stood, holding the folder against my side. You demanded I give my brother $15 million, so I quietly stopped paying the thing that made you think he deserved it. The words did not come out loud. They did not need to. They landed where they were supposed to land. Ridge looked at me then with something close to recognition. Not gratitude, not yet. Maybe never. But recognition is sometimes the first crack in a family myth. I turned to leave. My father rose, but I shook my head. If any of you want to speak to me without a number attached, you can try. If this is about money, I won't answer. Outside, the air smelled like creek water and rain. I crossed the pedestrian bridge behind River Mill Inn slowly, not because I wanted a dramatic exit, but because my knees felt strange. Halfway across, I stopped and placed one hand on the rail. I thought of paper, glue, string, canned beans from my mother's pantry, and Ridge carrying my work into a classroom while I stayed home with empty hands. I had spent most of my life becoming stronger and calling it healing, but strength without boundaries is just a nicer name for being used. Odette was right. A bridge does not chase the truck. It either holds or it doesn't. That day, I stopped holding. The creek moved under me, brown and steady, carrying bits of leaves toward the river. For the first time in years, I felt no need to follow anything. The collapse was not instant. Real life rarely gives you the clean drama people expect. The bonding company declined renewal without my support. Ridge tried 2 other agencies, then a third through someone the retired commissioner knew. All of them asked for financials. All of them saw the debt, the late payments, the supplier history, and the sudden absence of collateral. The regional contract went to another company out of Louisville. The bank reduced Ridge's credit line. Suppliers moved him to upfront payment. He sold 2 excavators, then the second office trailer, then the big sign Brissa loved because it looked impressive from the road. Quenby Civic Works did not disappear. It shrank. Ridge went back to private repair jobs, driveways, drainage ditches, small work paid in stages by people who wanted proof before pride. Maybe that was good for him, maybe not. It was no longer mine to decide. Brissa left before winter. Not in a storm, from what I heard. She packed cleanly, took the ring light, and changed her last name online before Ridge told my parents. My mother stopped posting company updates. She still called twice, both times starting with, "Your brother is trying," and both times I ended the call before the sentence became a request. Darrow sent a note 3 months later. One line. "I should have seen the bridge." I read it 3 times. I did not forgive him that day. Forgiveness is not a performance, and I had spent enough of my life performing peace for people who liked me quiet. But I kept the note, not because it fixed anything, because it was the first time my father had named the right object. As for me, I did something with part of the money that felt like giving without disappearing. I started the Paper Bridge Fund for young women studying construction management, compliance, civil engineering, and trade administration, the invisible work behind visible things. The first ceremony was held in Lexington in a plain conference room with bad coffee and 12 women who reminded me of every version of myself I had almost lost. Odette Pryor came in a dark green suit and told them, "Some women build bridges, some women become them. The smart ones learn the difference." They laughed, but a few of them wiped their eyes. I did too, not because I was sad, because the money finally felt clean. It was building something without burying me underneath it. A year after the award night, I drove back to Copperline alone. I did not tell my parents. I parked near the old school and walked to the river bridge. The county had finally repaired the railing. Not Ridge's company, someone else. The work looked solid. I carried a small frame in my bag. Inside was a copy of that old ribbon from the paper bridge contest. I had found a photo of it years ago in a box my mother gave me by accident, Ridge grinning with my project in his hands. I did not bring the ribbon to return it. I brought it to remember the truth correctly. I had always been the builder. My family's mistake was not failing to see that once, it was building a whole life around not seeing it. My parents demanded I give my brother $15 million because they thought his dream was the family legacy. They never asked how long I had been paying for that dream to stand upright. So I stopped. Not because I hated Ridge, not because I wanted my mother to cry or my father to feel ashamed. I stopped because love is not a lifetime contract to hold up someone else's name. I stopped because being useful is not the same as being loved. I stopped because a family that only sees your strength when it needs shelter will keep calling you selfish for wanting a roof of your own. If you have been the bridge for people who never look down, hear me clearly, you are allowed to step away. You are allowed to keep your money, your name, your years, your breath. You are allowed to let people meet the weight of what they built. I was never the weak child. I was never the spare one. I was the bridge. And the day I stopped holding, I finally crossed into my own life. Commentary, discussion, explanation, and lessons. Now let's slow down and talk about what this story is really showing us. Because this is not only a story about money, it is not only about a brother asking for $15 million, it is about the kind of family system where one person is always praised and another person is always used. Tavia's story hurts because her family did not ignore her completely. That would have been easier to understand. They noticed her when she was useful. They came to her when they needed clean records, money, paperwork, support, silence, and sacrifice. But they did not notice her when she needed love, respect, credit, or simple fairness. That is the painful center of the story. Sometimes the people who call you strong are not praising you. Sometimes they are giving themselves permission to give you less. At the beginning of the story, Ridge is standing in front of the whole town with an award in his hand. Everyone is clapping for him. The banner calls him self-made. That word matters. Self-made means he built everything himself. But the audience already learns that this is not true. Tavia is sitting quietly near the service doors, watching him receive public honor for something that survived because of her private money. This creates a strong emotional contrast. Ridge is in the light. Tavia is near the edge of the room. Ridge is being photographed, Tavia is being erased, and that is exactly how her family has treated them since childhood. Ridge gets the picture, Tavia builds the frame. The paper bridge memory is one of the most important parts of the story. When they were children, Tavia built the bridge. Ridge took it, the parents allowed it, then Ridge got the ribbon. That childhood scene tells us the whole family pattern in a simple way. It was not only about a school project, it was training. Tavia was being trained to give. Ridge was being trained to receive. The parents were teaching both children their roles. Tavia learned that her work could be taken from her if Ridge needed confidence. Ridge learned that he could take something and still be praised. That is why the adult story feels so believable. The $15 million demand did not come from nowhere. It started with that little paper bridge. Now let's look at Ridge. He is not written as a cartoon villain. He works, he has a company, he has employees, he has a public image. That makes the story stronger because real entitlement often hides inside partial effort. Ridge did do some work, but he did not do all the work. He accepted the praise of being self-made while knowing, at least partly, that Tavia had helped him. Maybe he did not know the full amount, but he knew enough to stay quiet. That silence is important. A person does not have to know every detail to know they are benefiting from someone else's sacrifice. Ridge's real failure is not only financial, his real failure is moral. He let the town believe he stood alone while his sister was holding the ground under him. Tavia's parents are the emotional engine of the damage. Sybil and Darrow do not simply favor Ridge. They build a whole family religion around him. Ridge is the name. Ridge is the legacy. Ridge builds real things. Tavia is practical. Tavia is steady. Tavia will be fine. These words sound small, but they are dangerous. When a family says, "You will be fine," they may be saying, "We do not have to help you." When they say, "You are the strong one," they may be saying, "You can carry more pain without complaining." That is what happened to Tavia. Her strength became the excuse for her neglect. Her success became the reason everyone felt allowed to ask more from her. The $25 million sale is also important. Tavia did not become successful overnight. She built rivet mark systems through years of lonely work. She learned boring rules. She solved problems nobody respected until those problems became valuable. This is a very good point for the audience to notice. Visible work often gets more respect than invisible work. Ridge pours concrete, so people think he builds. Tavia builds systems, compliance, protection, and structure. So people act like her work is not real. But without invisible work, visible work can collapse. This happens in families too. The person cooking, organizing, paying, remembering, fixing, calming, and preventing disaster is often invisible until they stop. The performance bond twist gives the story its real power. This is not just Tavia gave Ridge money. It is deeper than that. She gave him access, she gave him credibility, she gave him the ability to bid on public projects. A performance bond is basically a promise that if the contractor fails, someone can cover the damage. In this story, Tavia became the hidden strength behind Ridge's company. She did not stand at the job site, but her name stood behind every job. That is why the line, "Every sidewalk he poured had my signature buried under it," is so powerful. It shows that her support was not emotional decoration. It was structural. Ridge's company was not standing beside her. It was standing on her. Now, let's talk about the family's demand. They do not ask Tavia gently. They do not first thank her. They do not say, "We found out what you did for Ridge all these years." They do not even understand what she already gave. They find out she has money, and immediately they create a reason why Ridge deserves it. This is a common pattern in toxic families. They do not count your sacrifice when you give it quietly. But the moment you have something left for yourself, they count it loudly. Tavia's parents see her $25 million as family money, but they never saw her 10 years of bond payments as family sacrifice. That double standard is the heart of the conflict. The demand for $15 million is not only greedy, it is insulting. Ridge and Brissa say his expansion is real, while Tavia's computer work is somehow less real. That line is designed to make Tavia feel small. It tells her, your success only matters if it serves his dream. And this is where the story becomes more than financial revenge. It becomes a story about identity. Tavia has to decide whether she believes her family's version of her or her own. Is she only the practical daughter who helps? Or is she a full person with the right to protect her own life? One of the smartest parts of the story is that Tavia does not immediately explode. She goes to a lawyer. She checks the documents. This matters because calm revenge stories work best when the heroine is not acting from blind anger. She is acting from truth. Larkin Frost explains that Tavia can stop renewing the support. This is a very important distinction. Tavia is not stealing from Ridge. She is not attacking him. She is not destroying something that belongs fully to him. She is refusing to keep lending him her strength. That is why the line, "You are not required to lend him your spine forever," feels like a life lesson inside the story. Then comes Odette's lesson. Odette is not there to make revenge louder. She is there to make Tavia wiser. The bridge metaphor returns. A bridge does not chase the truck that crosses it. This is such a strong idea because many people live like emotional bridges. They hold families together, they hold relationships together, they carry people across trouble. But when those people reach the other side, they do not turn around and thank the bridge. They just keep walking. Odette teaches Tavia that she does not have to chase Ridge for recognition. She does not have to beg her parents to admit the truth. She can simply stop holding. That is why the quiet action is more powerful than a dramatic scene. Tavia does not make a public post. She does not scream at the award event. She does not expose Ridge in the newspaper. She sends a legal notice and stops renewing the support. This is the real revenge, not because it is cruel, but because it is honest. She removes the false support, and then everyone finally sees what was real. Sometimes the strongest boundary is not a speech. Sometimes it is a stopped payment, a closed door, an unsigned renewal, an unanswered call, or one calm sentence. I am not doing this anymore. When Ridge's business starts shaking, the family immediately blames Tavia. This is realistic. People who have been protected for years often think the protection is normal. When it disappears, they call it an attack. Ridge says she killed his expansion, but she did not kill it. She stopped feeding it. That difference matters. If something can only survive because one person is secretly paying, hiding, fixing, and carrying everything, then maybe it was never strong. Maybe it was only protected from the truth. This story asks the audience a difficult question. How many things in our lives look successful only because someone invisible is suffering underneath? The River Mill Inn confrontation works because Tavia does not walk in empty. She walks in with records. This is not emotional chaos. This is an accounting. The family has created a public pressure room with cousins and a retired commissioner, hoping shame will force her to obey. But Tavia brings proof, and proof changes the room. She shows the original agreement, the renewals, the supplier payments, and the total amount, $2,187,600. That number is important because it turns invisible care into visible fact. It is hard to dismiss pain when it has receipts. The strongest moment in the confrontation is when Tavia says, "I am letting him stand without me." There's a difference. This line is the lesson of the whole story. In toxic families, boundaries are often described as cruelty. When you stop paying, they call it abandonment. When you stop fixing, they call it betrayal. When you stop answering, they call it disrespect. But sometimes you are not pushing anyone down. You're only stepping away from the place where they were standing on you. That is not cruelty, that is self-respect. Ridge's breakdown is also important. He finally sees that his identity was not fully his. His self-made image had someone else's sacrifice hidden inside it. That is a painful truth, but it is also necessary. The story does not say Ridge did no work. It says he did not work alone, and he lied by accepting praise as if he did. That is a powerful lesson about credit. Taking help is not shameful. Pretending you never received help is shameful. Being supported is not the problem. Erasing the person who supported you is the problem. Sybil's reaction shows another lesson. Some parents do not want truth. They want the old system back. Sybil does not first feel sorry for Tavia. She feels threatened because the family structure is being exposed. She calls Tavia selfish because selfish is the word controlling people use when useful people stop being available. This is something many viewers will understand. The moment you stop being convenient, some people will rewrite your entire character. Yesterday you were strong, today you are selfish. Yesterday you were dependable, today you are cruel. Nothing changed except your boundary. Darrow's role is quieter but still important. He knew something, maybe not everything, but enough. His weakness is not loud cruelty. His weakness is silence. That kind of person can be just as damaging because silence protects the wrong side. Darrow may feel guilty, but guilt without action does not save anyone. His later note, "I should have seen the bridge," is small, but it matters because it names the truth. Still, Tavia does not rush to forgive him. That is a good lesson. You do not have to accept late regret as full repair. A person can admit one sentence of truth and still have years of damage to answer for. The ending is not about destroying Ridge completely. This makes the story more mature. Quemby Civic Works shrinks. Ridge loses the big contract, sells equipment, and returns to smaller private jobs. That is not a cartoon punishment, it is consequence. He must now live at the level his own strength can actually support. That is fair. Tavia does not celebrate his pain. She simply stops confusing his survival with her responsibility. This is a healthier kind of justice, not revenge for revenge's sake, but balance returning after years of imbalance. The Paper Bridge Fund gives the story emotional healing. Tavia does not become bitter. She takes part of her money and helps young women entering construction management, compliance, civil engineering, and trade administration. This is beautiful because she supports people without disappearing inside their needs. That is the difference between healthy giving and toxic sacrifice. Healthy giving has boundaries. It honors both people. Toxic sacrifice erases one person so another can shine. Tavia finally learns to give in a way that does not bury her. So what do we learn from this story? First, invisible work is still work. Just because people do not clap for it does not mean it has no value. Second, being strong does not mean you should carry everyone forever. Third, family love should not require financial self-destruction. Fourth, if someone only respects your money, they do not respect you. Fifth, a boundary may look cold to people who benefited from your warmth for too long. And finally, the person holding everything together is allowed to put it down. The deeper message is this. Tavia did not win because Ridge lost. Tavia won because she stopped asking her family to see her before she gave herself permission to live. That is freedom. For years, she thought the goal was to finally be recognized as the builder. But by the end, she understands something better. She does not need Ridge to admit it. She does not need Zibble to bless it. She does not need the town to clap. She knows the truth. She has the records. She has her life back. And sometimes that is the strongest ending a story can have. So when we look at this story, we should not only ask, was Tavia right to stop paying? We should ask, why was she ever expected to pay in silence? We should ask why Ridge's dream mattered more than her safety. We should ask why her parents called his ambition legacy and her sacrifice duty. Those questions are where the real commentary lives. Because many people are not trapped by one big demand. They are trapped by years of small expectations that slowly become a cage. And maybe that is why this story connects so deeply. Many people have been Tavia in some form. Maybe not with a bond, maybe not with millions, but with time, with emotional labor, with rent money, with unpaid care, with quiet forgiveness, with being the one who always understands, always adjusts, always fixes, always holds. This story says something very clear to those people. You are allowed to stop being the bridge. You are allowed to let grown people stand on their own ground. And when you finally step away, the sound you hear may not be destruction. It may be your own life beginning again. The end.